And we talk about how we as Christians are light of the world, that we are to represent Christ to the world. But different things come up in our life, and our light might get snuffed out. It gets hidden. People aren't able to see our light. And not only are we the light of the world, but many times in the Christian faith, we talk about our own spiritual light or our spiritual fire. It's this fire within us that drives us to do more with our Christian faith. It's this fire within us that encourages us to walk a better way, to be a better example to others, to do more as a Christian. But many times, our spiritual fire gets blown out. We become lazy in our faith. We become weak in our spiritual walk, or we just get to the point where we just don't want to do anything. You know, during the summer, there's this little frustrating thing that seems to pop up every summer. And it is one bloodsucker, let me tell you that. You probably know what I'm talking about, the mosquito. We don't like mosquitoes. No one likes them. In fact, for me, that is my least favorite insect. And I don't know what it is about me, but Jessica and I can go outside and they all come to me. I mean, we will go outside, we'll be walking around, and I will come in with literally 10, if not 15 mosquito bites. And Jessica's like, there were mosquitoes out there? And we'll get them in our house. And I go like on the hunt for them when I see it. In fact, I killed 2 already today in our house. But mosquitoes, I can't, and I've looked, and I've gone on to research what attracts mosquitoes to me specifically. And I've looked and I've tried different things, and the one thing that we all know that mosquitoes are attracted to is stagnant water. They tell you every summer, don't let water pool up. If you have a bucket in your backyard or something that water collects in, after a rain, dump it out. Look for stagnant water that's just sitting around, because mosquitoes are drawn to stagnant water. Because in that stagnant water, in that water that is quiet, is calm, that's not doing anything, they like to lay their eggs. Because water that's moving, they can't lay their eggs because it's moving. The eggs get washed away or whatever. Water that's just sitting there, not doing anything, is ideal for mosquitoes. And that causes an interesting point that when something like water is just sitting there, not doing anything, it draws in something that is unwanted and can be harmful to humans. Like water, when something that's sitting there, not doing anything, it draws in something that is unwanted and can be harmful to humans. Let me say that one more time. Like water, when something is just sitting there, not doing anything, it draws in something that is unwanted and can be harmful to people. As Christians, we can become stagnant in our faith. We need to always be growing and doing things with our faith. And when I say stagnant Christians, you might think of Christians that aren't growing spiritually, that they just crave and only stay at that spiritual milk, like Hebrews chapter 5, verse 11 talks about. And that can be part of it, but what I want us to focus on tonight, as stagnant Christians, I mean a Christian that does nothing with their faith. You know this kind of Christian that I'm talking about? They show up Sunday morning and Sunday night, Wednesday night. They look the part of Christian. They wear the right things. They say the right things. They maybe even have the right bumper stickers, but their faith is boring. Their true Christian walk is dull. It's important for us as Christians to not give up in doing good. Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, if you want to turn there. Paul writes to the church in Galatia, chapter 6, verse 9. He says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Paul encourages the church in Galatia, let us not become weary in doing good. Let us not give up in doing good. Christians need to persevere and do good for the purpose of God's kingdom. We are to not give up. We are to keep going. We are to persevere. We are to stay the course of doing what's right, doing what's good, doing what God calls us to do. And many times we may not see the immediate effects of our work that we're doing. We may not see the effects immediately in our own lives. We may not see the effects immediately in the lives of others or those that we're around. But we continue on. We stay strong. For just as stagnant water brings in mosquitoes, I believe stagnant Christians attract spiritual mosquitoes. Revelation chapter 2. You can turn there. We all know the story of Revelation, or at least kind of the idea of Revelation, talking about the end of times. But in Revelation chapter 2 and chapter 3, you've got these letters being sent out to the 7 churches. And I want us to focus on one letter to a particular church. Revelation chapter 2, beginning in verse 1. This is the letter to the church in Ephesus. To the angel of the church in Ephesus write, "These are the words of him who holds the 7 stars in his right hand and walks among the 7 golden lampstands. I know your deeds, your hard work and your perseverance. I know that you cannot tolerate wicked people, that you have tested those who claim to be apostles but are not, and have found them to be false. You have persevered. You have endured hardships for my name and have not grown weary." You read that letter, or the start of that letter, and you think, man, that sounds pretty good for them. You think, I know your hard work. I know that you work hard. I know your deeds. I know that you persevere. That you've tested false prophets and found them to be false. So you haven't listened to false prophets. You've persevered. You've endured hardships for the name of Christ. But then he continues on in verse 4. "Yet I hold this against you. You have forsaken the love you had at first. Consider how far you have fallen. Repent, turn back, and do the things you did at first. If you do not repent, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place." It writes and says, you have forsaken the love you had at first. You have forgotten your first love. They used to do good, but they've forgotten that first love. They've turned away from it. It appears that at first, their spiritual life was strong. They were active. They were committed to it. They were kind of in that honeymoon stage. But the honeymoon is over. That passion that was once there is no longer present. And so, have we fallen into the same trap the church in Ephesus did? What was our spiritual life like when we were first baptized? Were we involved? Were we passionate about our faith? But over time, have we become lazy? Do we not care anymore? Do we maybe just show up and not do anything? I encourage us all to do some personal reflection, to look at our own spiritual walk right now. Do we wish we could do more? Or maybe I should ask, do we even want to do more? So our spiritual walk, our spiritual life, if it's dull, we have no excitement. And our marriage with Christ is in desperate need of some marriage counseling. But what do? Well, we have to discover our passion. We have to find what makes our Christian walk more exciting. I think we all have hobbies or things that we're passionate about, things we enjoy. Things that when we think, I can't wait to go do that. I can't wait to try this new thing, or I can't wait to try that or do this, because we're passionate about that. We're excited about it. We might say, that's what I get up in the morning for. We can have passions in our spiritual walk. Things that we are passionate about, things that just make us excited about our faith. And so we have to figure out what that passion is. Maybe we try new things. Maybe we experience new things. Becoming stagnant happens when we do nothing, or when things we were doing just don't work anymore. Maybe we had a passion, but we're no longer passionate about that thing. And so we find what we are now passionate about. We move on to something else. So maybe we should try serving in a new ministry. Perhaps we haven't taught a class in a while, or maybe we've never even taught a class. Perhaps we've never gone and prayed with the sick. Perhaps we've never visited those who are shut in. Perhaps we've never visited those in prison. Perhaps we've never served someone at a shelter. There's a ton of things that we can do even here in Choctaw, even here at Choctaw Church of Christ, to stir our spiritual life. But the point is to try something new, to get out and do stuff with your spirituality, with your faith. 2 Timothy chapter 1, Paul's writing to Timothy, and in verse 6, he says an interesting phrase that I think we can apply to our spiritual walk as well. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 6. He says, "For this very reason I remind you to fan into flame the gifts of God, which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline." Now, we don't have a gift through the laying on of hands, but in the same way, we have a gift. And we need to fan that flame. You fan a flame by feeding it oxygen. When you've got just a little spark or an ember, you blow into it. You try to stir those coals. You blow oxygen and you feed oxygen to that fire so it can grow, because it thrives on oxygen. You fan the flame. We need to feed our spiritual fire oxygen so that it becomes stronger and more powerful. We do this by serving, by getting involved in new ministries, or by getting more involved in ministries we're already involved with. And notice verse 7. He says, "We do not have a spirit of timidity, but power, love, and self-discipline." I like this, to think of this kind of as go big or go home. We have to go big with our spirituality. I was dressing Addie this afternoon, getting her ready for tonight, and we put on a Nike onesie, and it says just, I think it's pink letters, or I don't know, but it says, "Just do it." And I was like, sometimes we just need to remind ourselves for our spiritual walk to just do it. We think of all these ideas like, I need to serve in this ministry, or I need to do this with my spiritual walk, or I need to increase my prayer life, or I need to get back in the Bible. Well, just do it. Make a commitment to do it. And this idea of fanning that flame makes me think of the song that our teens sing called Light the Fire. I think it was like when I was a kid, it was an old song kind of for the teens. So now it's not so much a new song, but I'll read the words to you. It says, I stand to praise you, but I fall on my knees. My spirit is willing, but my flesh is so weak. My spirit is willing, but my flesh is so weak. And then the chorus says, light the fire in my soul, fan the flame, make me whole. Lord, you know just where I've been, so light the fire in my heart again. We're asking God to stir our fire, to stir that fire inside of us. But if we're going to sing that song, we have to be willing for God to light that fire within us. One of God's prophets in the Old Testament talks about a similar idea, this idea of meaning what we say. Isaiah chapter 9. Israel and Judah, they've both sinned and turned away from God. They're worshiping other gods, and when they do worship the one true God, it's not how they're supposed to worship Him. And so God speaks through Isaiah in chapter 29. It says in verse 13, the Lord says, these people come near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. These people come near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Their worship of me is based on merely human rules they have been taught. He says they honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They're just doing lip service, basically. They're saying the words in their worship, but they don't really mean it. And he says their worship is all based on a bunch of rules. You know, I think a modern day Isaiah might say to us, yes, they gather on Sunday morning, they sing some songs, but they don't mean the words. They show up on Sunday morning, but they don't really want to be there. They eat some bread and drink some juice because they're supposed to, but it really means nothing to them. They put some money in a tray out of obligation, but don't have a giving heart. It's going through the motions. A song came out when I was in college called The Motions. And when it came out in college, I was like, I love this song. And I wanted to read the lyrics. It says, this might hurt, it's not safe, but I know that I've got to make a change. I don't care if I break, at least I'll be feeling something. Because just okay is not enough. Help me fight through the nothingness of life. This idea of just coasting is not okay. The stagnant, just being there. Continues on, no regrets, not this time. I'm going to let my heart defeat my mind. Let your love make me whole. I think I'm finally feeling something. Because just okay is not enough. Help me fight through the nothingness of this life. And then the chorus says, I don't want to go through the motions. I don't want to go one more day without your all-consuming passion inside of me. I don't want to spend my whole life asking, what if I had given everything instead of going through the motions? And that idea that I don't want to spend my whole life asking, what if I had given everything? You know, I picture myself at a judgment scene and before God, and He says, I don't know you. And you wonder, like, maybe I should have given more. Maybe I held back from God. I should have given everything. What if I had given everything? Well, like I said, this song came out when I was a junior or sophomore at Oklahoma Christian. And there was a freshman there at OC named Ryan McAfee. And he was going to OC, and he made this, on March 1st, actually, sorry, I'm getting ahead. On March 1st, he told his friends, kind of his close friends, said, start holding me accountable in my spiritual walk. Make sure that I'm not just showing up to church because I have to. Make sure that I'm actually growing in my faith. And so he asked them to hold him accountable, and then he changed his Facebook status to, I don't want to go through the motions. I don't want to go one more day without your all-consuming passion inside of me. He made that the line from the chorus his status, and then the next morning, he was driving on the highway, and a truck load came undone, and it hit his car and killed him. And so at Ryan's funeral, they played this song, and they talked about this idea of not going through the motions in your faith, being passionate about it, being committed, not being stagnant. What if we had given everything? But how do you know if you've become spiritually stagnant? How do you know? Because it can be kind of hard. It can be different for all of us on how we are growing in our faith, how we are moving in our faith. And so I've got 2 ways on how to check. If we don't find ourselves getting excited about spiritual things. We talked a lot about passion. Talking a lot about passion in our spiritual fire. What excites us? When we think about heaven, when we think about God's grace and the forgiveness He offers, we should feel something. When we think about the power of the resurrection, we should feel something inside of us. Some kind of emotion should stir. We were talking about this with the teens this summer on one of our Peak of the Weeks. That's our Wednesday night class during the summer. And we were talking about worship. And we got to this discussion that, so many people in America tend to sing the national anthem with gusto. They stand up and there's this pride and excitement about it. But then sometimes when we come to worship, we're standing there and we sing, hallelujah, praise Jehovah. And it's just not the same. And I wonder, why is that different? We're singing hallelujah, praise Jehovah. We are singing to God, the creator of the world. There should be some kind of emotion that stirs up inside of us. And so, do we find ourselves getting excited about spiritual things? So that's number 1. Number 2, if you look back at where you were spiritually last year and you don't see any growth, then we've become spiritually stagnant. Growth is critical for our spiritual flame to even stay lit. And there's no set growth. I think what's interesting is there's no by the time you reach this age or this spiritual age, you have to be here. Or you need to be where this person is next year. No, it's just this idea that growth is important. Making sure that where you were in 2016 is not the same where you are right now, August 27th, 2017. Do you feel closer to God than you did in 2016? Has your faith grown in some way since 2016? Do you know more about the Bible than you did in 2016? Some kind of spiritual growth. And so what do you do about it? How do you change this stagnant spiritual life? Well, first, you have to recognize and acknowledge where your heart is. Be honest with yourself about your heart. look in, do that personal reflection and say, yeah, my heart's not where it needs to be right now. Yeah, I'm going through a rough week or a rough month or a rough year, and my heart, my spiritual faith just hasn't been where it needs to be. Be honest. Acknowledge, yes, my heart isn't where I want it to be. So acknowledge. Recognize it. That's okay. But then do something about it. And first, I would say, take it to God. You know, some of the most rare and authentic emotion that's found in the Bible is found in the lament psalms, where the psalmist is crying out, almost complaining to God, not complaining about God. They aren't complaining about God, but they've got a problem or a frustration. They recognize something, and they are going to God about that problem. Psalm chapter 5, verse 1 says, "Listen to my words, Lord. Consider my lament. Hear my cry for help. My King and my God, for to you I pray. In the morning, Lord, you hear my voice. In the morning, I lay my requests before you and wait expectantly. But I, by your great love, can come into your house." Jump down to verse 8. "In reverence, I bow down toward your holy temple. Lead me, Lord, in your righteousness because of my enemies. Make your way straight before me." The psalmist doesn't turn inward. He doesn't try to deal with the problem himself. They don't go to a friend or to a family member. They first go to God. If you look at any of the lament psalms, they are turning to God in their moment of need. And so when we feel spiritually stagnant, when things just aren't clicking for us spiritually, we have to first go to God. And that might be tough. Might feel weird, might feel awkward, it may even seem forced at first, but if we are sincere and consistent and try, then our flame will start to grow. And then you continually seek God, and you seek God in worship. Psalm 63, verse 1, "You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you. In a dry and parched land where there is no water, I've seen you in the sanctuary. Behold your power and your glory, because your love is better than life. My lips will glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live, and in your name I will lift up my hands." Psalm 66, verse 1, "Shout for joy to God, all the earth. Sing the glory of his name. Make his praise glorious." Shout for joy to God, all the earth. Psalm 138, "I will praise you, Lord, with all my heart. Before the gods, I will sing your praise. I will bow down toward your holy temple and will praise your name for your unfailing love and your faithfulness. For you have so exalted your solemn decree that it surpasses your fame." Have you ever literally bowed down before God? You know, we sing about it all the time. We talk about it, but why not actually do it? You know, sometime this week, I want to encourage you that when you are praying to God, to lay down on the floor. Don't go to sleep. But imagine yourself bowing down before God. Get that image in your head and imagine that you are bowing down before God. What would you say to God in that moment as he's sitting on his throne and you are bowing down? And see if it doesn't change how you pray. Sometime this week also, by yourself, sing your favorite praise song out loud, looking to heaven. Imagine you are singing that praise song, looking at God and saying those words to Him face to face. Imagine you are before His throne singing those songs. Do those two things. I would encourage you to try those two things and see if it doesn't maybe stir something inside of you spiritually. I'm not saying you have to do it every time, but try both of those, try one of those, and see if it doesn't stir some kind of fire or flame or passion inside of you if you don't feel closer to God by trying that. If you want to be free from a stagnant spiritual life, something that's just sitting there, drawing spiritual mosquitoes in, then I encourage you to sincerely seek God. Seek God in prayer. Go to Him in prayer. Seek Him in worship, and then seek Him in His Word. It might be awkward at first. It might be difficult. It might even, like I said, seem a little forced. But continually set a routine and be sincere in it. And I think you will find that spiritual fire start to come back. That flame being fanned into existence. If you're here tonight and you want to begin seeking God and enter into a relationship with Him, then we'd love to help you do that. If we can help you in any way, please come now as we stand and sing.